A very good afternoon to all. So, myself, Dr. Manish, I am starting with another video. In the last video, I've talked about the kinetic part of the scapulohumeral rhythm. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the kinetics part of scapulohumeral rhythm. So, kinetic is basically the study of the forces which are being subjected over the bony segment, producing a specific type of synchronized and coordinated movement in order to have the functional range of motion or the functional movement in different joints. So kinetic especially emphasis on the study of the different forces which are causing the functional movement in our body. So scapulohumeral rhythm, we know it is very important rhythm which is being present between the glenohumeral joint and the scapulothoracic joint. So there are certain group of muscles which are being coordinating with each other in order to produce the most important upward rotation of the scapula for having the complete 180 degree of uh, abduction and flexion movement at the glenohumeral joint. Okay, so we are seeing those muscles, how they are involved and how they are being coordinated with each other. So for understanding this concept, we need to know certain group of muscles which are present around our scapular region. The most important is the upper trapezius, which has three groups of muscles, or you can say three bands of muscles. Upper traps, middle traps, and lower traps are present. Along with that, there is another muscle which is called as the serratus anterior muscle. So basically, the four scapula are being produced between the three bands of trapezius muscles and the serratus anterior muscles in order to have the upward rotation of the scapula to complete the sagittal plane and the frontal plane movement of the glenohumeral joint. So this upward rotation of the scapula are being produced by the four couple formed between the trapezius group of muscles and the serratus anterior. So now we need to understand or trapezius muscles, since it has three bands, upper trapezius, middle trapezius and lower trapezius. So every three bands of the trapezius muscles has a specific function. It's not only helping in the upward rotation of the scapula, but at the same time they are doing the different functions also. For example, you can see the upper trapezius is doing the elevation of the shoulder joint, okay, and at the same time it is also helping in the upward rotation of the scapula. So elevation and the upward rotation of the scapula are the main function of the upper trapezius. On the other hand, you can see the middle trapezius is the main adductor of the scapula. So middle traps is not contributing in the upper rotation of the scapula, and lower traps is the depression of this depressor of the scapular bone, and at the same time they are helping in the upward rotation of the scapula. So if the trapezius muscles are contracting, all these three muscles will contract together. That means the upper traps will try to produce the elevation with the upward rotation of the scapula. The middle traps will contract and it will try to adduct the scapula, and lower traps will contract, it will depress the scapula and at the same time will help in the upward rotation of the scapula. But we do not require the elevation by the upper traps, adduction by the middle traps and the depression by the lower traps. We need only the upward rotation of the scapula to occur with the glenohumeral abduction and flexion. And if you will see the serratus anterior muscles is doing abduction of the scapula along with the upward rotation of the scapula, and at the same time it is a depressor also. It will depress the scapular bone. So lower traps and serratus anterior both are the depressor of the scapula along with the upward rotation of the scapula. So when the serratus anterior is contracting, it will do the three functions, but we need only the upward rotation of the scapula. So how they are being channelized or synchronized with each other in order to have this smooth effortless upward rotation of the scapula that is occurring with our functional activity of shoulder flexion and abduction. We'll see that in this slide. So first we'll see the upward rotation of the scapula by the lower traps. Okay, so overall the trapezius muscle, if you will see the origin and insertion, they are originating from your occipital bone, then involving the ligament nuclei, and the spinous processes from T1 to T12, and they are going to inserting over the lateral one third of the clavicle, involving the acromion process also, and the spine of the scapula. So uh, I have talked about the origin insertion of all the three bands together: upper, middle, and lower traps. Serratus anterior is, on the other hand, is arising from the superolateral surface of your first to ninth ribs, and they are inserting over the superior and inferior angle along with the middle border of the scapula. So based on the origin and insertion, you can see they are the muscles which are having attachment over the clavicle and the scapular region. So they are the muscles which are producing the upward rotation of the scapula. Now, as we have talked about the lower trapezius, we'll see the lower trapezius and the upper trapezius, how they are functioning with each other. Okay, so we know the upper trapezius is elevating the clavicle also. It is producing the elevation, and at the same time uh, it is also helping in the upward rotation of the scapula, and the lower trapezius is actually depressing the scapula. Okay, and at the same time it is also helping in the upward rotation of the scapula. So that elevation of the clavicle by the upper trapezius is cancelled out by the depression of the lower trapezius. So these force vector cancel each other. So what is remaining is the upward rotation of the scapula by upper traps and the lower traps when they are contracting with each and forming the force couple within their own bands. Okay. Now when the middle trapezius is contracting, we know it is adducting the scapula. So that adduction of the scapula is produced by the middle trapezius muscle contraction, and serratus anterior is the abductor of the scapula. So the force vector of the serratus anterior, which is actually causing the abduction of the scapula, is cancelling out the adduction force vector of the middle trapezius. So middle trapezius force vector is being neutralized by the abduction force vector in the opposite direction, which is produced by the contraction of the serratus anterior. At the same time, serratus anterior, the depression force vector is also neutralizing the upper traps elevation. So lower traps depression and the serratus anterior depression both are neutralizing the elevation of the upper trapezius muscle. So basically what is happening, we are all these force vector of depression is cancelling out the elevation portion, and the adductor force vector, which is not required, is being cancelled out by the abductor force vector by the serratus anterior muscle. So overall, all these three muscles are actually providing your upward rotation of the scapula. So that is the main concept which I found to be very important to be discussed uh, in the portion of the scapulohumeral rhythm. So in the last video I have talked about the kinematic part, which states that there is a thoracic joint. Okay, whenever we are doing the frontal plane glenohumeral joint movement or the sagittal plane glenohumeral joint movement. So this 2:1 ratio starts after 30 degree of abduction. Okay, when we are moving in the frontal plane, and if we are moving the glenohumeral joint in the sagittal plane, that is we are doing the flexion movement. This 2:1 ratio starts after the 60 degree of flexion, and thereafter the ratio is being maintained. And for maintaining this ratio and for the smooth completion of 180 degree of flexion and extension of glenohumeral joint, we need the upward rotation of the scapula, and we know any movement in the joint is being produced by the contraction of the muscles. So these are the muscles: upper traps, middle traps, lower traps, and the serratus anterior contracting together cancelling out what is not required, neutralizing the forces which are not required, those force vectors, and only exhibiting the force vector which is required for the upward rotation of the scapula. So basically, uh, the upward rotation produced by the upper trapezius, produced by the lower trapezius, and lastly by the serratus anterior. So movement starts with the in the initial range by the upper trapezius. Towards the end range, the lower trapezius along with the serratus anterior muscles complete the upward rotation of the scapula in order to have the smooth 60-degree of upward rotation of the scapula at the level of the scapulothoracic joint in order to have the complete 180-degree of glenohumeral joint flexion and extension. So 120 degrees is occurring at the level of the glenohumeral joint, and 60 degrees is occurring at the scapulothoracic joint. So I hope this video is very useful to you all. Please subscribe the channel, and so that you can be receiving my important concept related to our physiotherapy domain, which will be effective for the academic purpose also and for the clinical purposes also. So please subscribe my channel and like my videos. So I will be coming with more videos regarding the important concept of physiotherapy domain. Okay, so myself, again, I am introducing myself, Dr. Manish Kumar, and founder of Physiomax Physiotherapy Center, which is in Faridabad. So I'm in the clinical practices in physiotherapy. Okay, so we'll meet in the next video. Thanks to all, and be safe and take care.